Criminal justice, how aptly named, wrongly arrested, baffled and claimed, and then stuck in a cell to rot there for years, while the ones who arranged it pursue their careers. But don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political, don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political. Justice, you're up on suspicion. The next thing you know, you're down at the station when they bang you on the head with a telephone book to help you recall what it was that you took. Well, don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political, don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political. We're not a drop in the ocean, we don't want pie in the sky. We could kick up a commotion, at least we could give it a try. Criminal justice, police in this state, frame up and verbal and incarcerate anyone that they think could get in the way. They're picked up and sent for a spell in Long Bay. Don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political, don't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. Get political, we won't get hysterical, negative and cynical, we're gonna change it. That was a song that I wrote over in Australia when I was involved with a campaign to get a political activist by the name of Tim Anderson out of jail. He had been framed by the New South Wales State Police and the secret intelligence organisation ASIO for a particularly heinous crime, which now that we've actually established beyond a shadow of doubt that it had nothing to do with Tim. The only plausible explanation for the 1979 Hilton explosion during a summit meeting of the Commonwealth Heads of State in Sydney. Some of you who are old enough might remember that event. Two policemen and 2 council workers lost their lives as a result of explosives placed in a garbage bin outside that hotel where the heads of state were residing. They exploded and four innocent people lost their lives, and it looks very likely now that it was actually a bungled security exercise. I know quite a few people, when they first hear that, think that's really implausible, but it's something that many people in Australia think is the only explanation left. ASIO was going to have its powers downgraded by the state government, and in order to prevent that, or to discourage it, they placed explosives in a garbage bin. I think they were meant to find it in the nick of time, but of course it all went horribly wrong and 4 people lost their lives, and someone had to carry the can. They decided it should be Tim Anderson. He spent a total of 14 years in jail for a crime he had nothing to do with. He's been released and compensated, but an investigation into ASIO has never been carried out. And that's what that song was about. Jimmy Maxton, James McDougall, Barbour, Gallagher and McShane, Agnes Dolan, Helen Crawford, up at the head, great John Maclean. These are some of the red Clydesiders, hundreds more had wished to name. A monument had raised forever, these are the flower of Scotland's fame. MacDougall fell apart in prison, came back out a broken shell. They did the same to young John Muir, 8 long months in the jaws of hell. His only crime was saying no to profit from a rich man's war. Property is theft, he said, don't die for what you can't live for. Rags and tax for common folk, silk for money lenders. The old church pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender keep us sweet. But what makes them feared is our pride in the red Clydesiders. Every Sunday night at Bath Street, John Maclean roared out his spiel. Thousands gathered round to hear him. He spoke loud and he spoke well. 15 years I've been a soldier, fighting for the cause, he said. I'll no stop now, though ye might jail me. Prison walls I dinna dread. John was lifted for sedition, Muir and Gallagher maxed in two. All the leaders of Red Clydeside trotted out for public view, while others flagged and begged for mercy. John threw caution to the wind. You stand accused, he told the judge, with the blood of millions on your hands. Rags and tax for common folk, silk for money lenders. The old church pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender. It was sweet, but what makes them fear is our pride in the red Clydesiders. Tortured by the screws in prison, force-fed with their poisoned food, haunted, shattered, still not broken, up on the cart he proudly stood. That night when John came home to Glasgow, weak of body, white of hair, Red Clyde burned as bright as midday. Then the tanks rolled through the square. Workers' blood splashed over the flagstones. Soldiers came with tanks and guns. Heads were broken, spirits too. The final chapter had begun. That treachery on Bloody Friday sent a stench to Heaven's Gate. John said, we'll build our own republic. The fight for justice can't wait. Rags and tax for common folk, silk for money lenders. The old church pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender keep us sweet. But what makes them feared is our pride in the red Clydesiders. Jimmy Maxton, James MacDougall, Barbour, Gallagher and McShane, Agnes Dolan, Helen Crawford, hundreds more I'd wish to name. Above them all, by head and shoulder, stood the dominie fae the Shaws, John Maclean, the pride of Glasgow. He gave his life for the common cause. Rags and tax for common folk, silk for money lenders. The old church pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender keep us sweet. But what makes them feared is our pride in the red Clydesiders. See an Arthur Henderson, he'd bummer o' the working men. When war broke out, he pressed his suit and he ran to catch the train. He signed a deal in London, nae mair strikes until the fighting's done. In Glasgow town, the word went round, tak tent to John Maclean. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. When they turned him out a Langside Hall, John stood up at the fountain. What he said was tailor-made to magnify the friction. You patriots can roar and bawl, it's not but braggart's fiction. The only war worth fighting for is war against oppression. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. The police wicht him out of there and down to Queen's Park Station. They told him plain, offend again, and we'll make you rue the day, son. Johnny didn't turn a hair, he called for a demonstration. A mighty throng, 10,000 strong, turned out against conscription. The next time that they came for him, John Kent, they meant the business. He didn't plea for mercy, he said, "Give me British justice." The justice that he called for stunned money into silence. When out of hell the hammer fell, 3 years was the sentence. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. Clamour to release Maclean reached fever pitch in Merman. In a year and a half they caught it off, but Christ had taxed him, sair man. He came back old before his time, but he didn't seem to care, man. The "Ah, you can, I'm still the one" will cause you to beware, man. The last time that they jailed Maclean, he came guy close to Skinner. With a rubber hose forced up his nose, they kept him swap support. Let him out or keep him in, Red Clyde was our blessed art. How why they turned the government was wheeling brawly Guthart. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. A bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. It's not really that difficult. Just remember that in Scots, because ours is the older, like quite a few people labour under the misapprehension that Scots is a sort of corrupted form of English. In actual fact, Scots is a much older form of that language, and I assert that because if you look at the spelling of words, like if you look at the spelling of head or bread, if you were to say them like you think you would say them, they'd be heed and breed, which is exactly what we say. But we also use a lot of pronunciations that are closer to the original Germanic. Like for strong, we say strang, and for night, we say nicht. So knowing all that, you should be able to follow me all right. So I'll teach you a wee bit of Glaswegian in this next chorus if you want to sing along in Glaswegian with me. Because I don't want to give you the idea that Red Clydeside was just a bunch of blokes. Because the role of the women, in fact, Red Clydeside began with an action taken by the women of Glasgow. As usual. As is so often the case. I mean, the 1905 revolution in Russia was actually started by women. In 1915, Glasgow had become a centre of wartime production. The WMD that were required for the slaughter, many of them, and the ships and so on were being built in Glasgow. There was a big steel and iron industry there, so it was perfectly situated to produce the weapons of mass destruction for the imperialist war. And that resulted in a massive influx of workers coming in to work in the factories in Glasgow, which led to a shortage of housing for the working class. And the landlords of the day responded to that. They were known as wartime profiteers. They began to drive up rents and evict anybody who couldn't pay. And of course, the most vulnerable amongst those were the women whose husbands were away fighting for king and country. And when news began to filter back to the trenches in mainland Europe that their wives were being thrown out and their kids were being thrown out onto the street, a lot of the squaddies in the trenches in the Scottish regiments were not at all happy about it, and there was widespread revolts in the trenches. So the government was very concerned about that, but far more concerned about the activities of a certain Mrs. Mary Barbour from a working class district in Glasgow known as Govan. It's a shipyard area. She took matters into her own hands and began organising direct action amongst the women. She began to make signs for everyone to put in their window saying, we are not paying the increased rent. And soon the whole of Govan, every window, you could see these signs going up, and people just stopped paying their rent to the landlord. And then she organised the women anytime the sheriff's officers came around to evict. Willie Gallagher, the Red Clydesider, wrote a book called Revolt on the Clyde, describing those days. And he said, Mrs. Barbour had an army of women who were wonderful. They could smell a sheriff's officer a mile away. Long before he reached his destination, he would be surrounded by a horde of furious women who drove him back in a hurried scramble for safety. How Victorian-like he put it. Lovely, isn't it? That they used whatever came to hand. They used food and kitchen utensils. They were not averse to removing the sheriff officer's trousers, apparently, on occasions. It's whatever was required, they did. And in this way, many evictions were prevented. And this was causing such a tumultuous response in Glasgow. 250,000 households were on rent strike at its peak. That the ruling class stepped in and arrested the leaders of the rent strike, including Mary herself. And on the day of the trial, Willie Gallagher takes up the story. He said, because what they did was they took them down to the station. They were all arrested, they were all charged, and then released on bail, which was a massive tactical error on the part of on the part of the authorities. Because the first thing they did was went to the factories where the menfolk were working and said, "We need you." And on the day of the trial, Willie Gallagher says, the Dungareed army of the proletariat invaded the centre of the city. And so terrified was the mayor of Glasgow, we call him the provost, that he got on the phone to Lloyd George and said, Glasgow is on the brink of a riot over this rent issue. What am I to do? And Lloyd George said, release them all immediately and tell them that a rent restriction act will be put into place. And the Rent Restriction Act of 1916, which set rent back to its pre-war level for all of the population of Great Britain, was fought for and won by the women of Glasgow, led by Mary Barbour. And it's a scandal, but there isn't a statue to Mary Barbour in the city of Glasgow. I think there should be a statue at least 100 foot high to Mary Barbour. So I wrote this wee song, and the chorus goes, I'm fae Govan, which means I'm from Govan. I'm fae Govan, and year fae Partick. That's a different working class area. This one here, this one here's fae Bridge o' Weir, somewhere else. And that one, Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, Protestants. There's some that's Catholic. But we're Mrs. Barbour's army, and we're here to do the work. So I'm fae Govan and you're fae Partick. This one here's fae Bridge o' Weir and Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. Have you got that? In the tenements of Glasgow in the year 1915, it was one lang bloody struggle to keep ourselves alive. We were counting out the coppers to buy our scraps of food, when the landlords put the rent up just because they could. The factories were humming, there was overtime galore, but wages they were driven down to subsidise the war. Out came Mrs. Barbour from her wee bit sing-a-len. She said, I'll organise the lassies if I cannae rouse the men, 'cause I'm fae Govan and you're fae Partick. This and here's fae Bridge o' Weir and Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. Mrs. Barbour made a poster saying we'll no pay higher rent, then chopped on every door of every Govan tenement. She said, put this in the windy, and when you hear me bang the drum, we'll run out and chase the factor or the way to kingdom come. When the poor wee soul come round, he was battered black and blue by a regiment in pennies that knew just what to do. Mrs. Barbour organised the gathering of the clans, and he burst out of the steamy army pots and frying pans, saying I'm fae Govan and you're fae Partick. This and here's fae Bridge o' Weir and Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. Mrs. Barbour's army spread through Glasgow like the plague. The maesters got the message, and the message was nae vague. While our men folk fight the Kaiser, we'll stay hame and fight the war against the greedy bastards who keep grinding down the poor. If you want to stop conscription, stand and fight the profiteers. Bring the hail big bloody sandpit crashing down around their ears. We'll no starve, said Mrs. Barbour, while the men we call our aim are marching off to hear their heart's blood wash like water down a drain. 'Cause I'm fae Govan and you're fae Partick. This and here's fae Bridge o' Weir and Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. It didn't take the government that lang to realise, if you crack down on the leaders, then the rest will compromise. They arrested Mrs. Barbour and they clapped her in the jail, but they made an awfully big mistake. They let her out on bail. She caught the men out of the factories on the Clyde and on the cart. They marched up to the courthouse saying, we'll tear the place apart. Mrs. Barbour's army brought the maesters to their knees, with a regiment in pennies, backed by one in dungarees, saying I'm fae Govan and you're fae Partick. This and here's fae Bridge o' Weir and Don's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. Aye, we're Mrs. Barbour's army and we're here to do the work. One more song from the Red Clydesides story, and then I'll sing in English for a little while. I'll give you a break from concentrating quite so hard on this Scots language of ours. On December the 3rd, 1918, Agnes Maclean, the wife of John, received a telegram from the British government to say that her husband would be released. And news of his release spread through the city of Glasgow like wildfire. 200,000 people assembled at Buchanan Street railway station to welcome him home from just outside of Aberdeen, where he had been put in jail. It was one of the largest political turnouts the city has ever seen. And this particular song I'm going to sing was not written by me. It was written by Hamish Henderson, and it's not on the Red Clydeside album, which is on sale up the back. It's on. It was actually the song that first alerted me to the story of John Maclean, because like many other Glaswegians, I knew a little bit about him, but not much. And it was a song that sparked my interest enough that I began to pursue it. And I had to plough through some fairly weighty tomes to extract the story. But these days, with the information highway, type Red Clydeside into a search engine, and you'll find that most of what I've been telling you tonight is absolutely true. In fact, all of it is absolutely true. I don't know why that came out. That was a Freudian slip. This song was written by Hamish Henderson, who's a very famous Scottish poet. And he's written a song called the John Maclean March. I wrote a song called When Johnny Came Hame to Glasgow, but I feel like doing Hamish's one. In the song, it says, Lenin's his comrade and Liebknecht's his mate. Lenin is, of course, Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks in revolutionary Russia. And he appointed John Maclean to be the representative of the Bolshevik government after it came to power in 1917 in Britain. Karl Liebknecht was Maclean's German counterpart, who was also thrown into jail and subjected to exactly the same inhumane treatment as was meted out to John. But in 1918, of course, the German working class employed the strategy of revolutionary defeatism and overthrew the Kaiser and demanded an end to the war. But, this is Hamish's song. It's called the John Maclean March, and at the end of every second verse, it repeats the last line. Great John Maclean has come hame to the Clyde. The Clyde is the river that flows through the city of Glasgow, and hame is the way we say home in Scotland. So we don't say bring the troops home, we say bring the troops hame. Join in if you will. Mac, did you see him as he came down Begargy, a war the Lammerlaw, north o' the Tay? Yon man is coming, the whole town is turning out, but ah sure he'll win back to Glasgow the day. The Jiners and Hudders on, they're marching for Clydebank. Come on now and hear him, he'll be our thrang to bide. Turn out, Jock and Jimmy, wave your crans and your muckle gantries. Great John Maclean's coming hame to the Clyde. We all sing, Great John Maclean's coming hame to the Clyde. Hullagile Street and London roads, the route that we're marching. The lads fae the Brumelaw, they're here to a man. Neil, where's your hodrums? You big hail and chuchter, take your pipes, mate, and march at the head of the clan. Hello, Pat Malone, I knew you'd be here, so the red and the green lad will wear side by side. Gorbals is his today, Glasgow belongs to him. The great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Forward to Glasgow Green, we'll march and get order. Will grips his banner wheel, that boy is nae blade. Look now, that's Johnny there, that's him, he's the bonny fighter. Lennon's his comrade, and Liebknecht's his mate. Tak tent while he's speaking, for they'll mind what he says here in Glasgow, our city, and the whole world beside. Aye man, the Scarlet's bonny, here's to ye hill and shonny. Great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Aye, great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Well, when it's finished, come away home to Springburn. Come home to your tea, John, we'll soon have you fed. It's hard work the speaking, och I'm sure he'll be tired enough. I'll sleep on the flare back and gie John my bed. The whole city's quiet now, it kens that he's resting. At home with his Glasgow friends, their fame and their pride. The red banners waving, man, Scotland has marched again. The great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Aye, great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. Great John Maclean has come home to the Clyde. This song is 300 years old. It comes from the Napoleonic Wars. And like the last one, it's on my latest album. I decided to start singing it and record it because I was watching Michael Moore's film, Fahrenheit 9/11. And the scene where we see army recruitment officers plying their trade outside a shopping mall in what is obviously a very disadvantaged area somewhere in the US, made me think of this song. It's called The Recruited Collier. I don't know whether you use that word here or not, but I'll tell you anyway that a collier is an old name for a coal miner. Maybe you know it or maybe you don't, I don't know, but that's what a collier is. And the song takes the form of a lament by a young woman who has just discovered that her boyfriend went to town and got drunk with some army officers who persuaded him to sign up for the British Army and go and fight against Napoleon. And she realizes that it's not going to end well. But that's how they used to get young boys to sign up, used to get them pissed. And then, of course, once you had signed up, if you didn't turn up on the appointed day, they'd come and shoot you. So this song's called The Recruited Collier. It comes from the northeast of England. What's the matter with you, my lass? Where's your dashing Jimmy? The soldier boys, they've picked him up. They've taken him far, far from me. Last payday he went off to town chased him in and made him drunk, and he'd better gone to the gallows. The very sight of his cockade, it sets us all a-crying, and me I nearly fainted twice. I thought that I was dying. My father would have paid the smart, and he ran for the golden guinea. But the sergeant swore he'd kissed the book, and now they've got young Jimmy. Jimmy talks about the war, it's worse than death to hear him. I have to go and hide my face, because I cannot bear him. Brigadier or grenadier, he says they're bound to make him. He laughs and cracks his jokes and bids me not forsake him. Come out o'er the stubble field, and below it runs the seam. I thought of Jimmy hewing there, but it was all a dream. He hewed the very coals we burn, and when the fire I'm lighting, coals was in his hands, it sets my heart a-beating. So break my heart and then it's sour, so break my heart, my dearie. Lay me in the cold, cold ground, far of single life I'm going to finish off with a song many of you will know. It was written a long time ago. It was written in 1871 by a Frenchman called Eugene Poitier. He was inspired to write this song out of his experiences fighting on the barricade to defend the commune that was set up when the working class in the city of Paris organized and came to power and began to run the city in the interests of those who lived in it, the ordinary people who lived and worked in it. rather than in the interests of those who owned it. The song has subsequently been translated into many different languages. I'm going to sing it in English. And I hope if you know the chorus that you'll join in, but if you know the verses, that's even better. The song has come to be sung. The song has, I think, come to be seen by some folk on the left as a sort of sacred anthem, only to be sung at the very end of nights. But I think it's such a wonderful song. It needs to be rescued from the ghetto of sacred cows and released back into a place where it can range free and be sung as often as possible. Not saved for those solemn occasions when old men stand on balconies and wave at tanks. It wasn't written for that purpose. It was written for us to sing. And the chorus goes, "Comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race." Please join in. Arise, you workers from your slumbers. Arise, ye prisoners of want. For reason in revolt now thunders, and at last ends the age of cant. Away with all your superstition, servile masses, arise, arise. We'll change henceforth the old tradition, we'll spurn the dust to win the prize. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. No more deluded by reaction, on tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action, they'll break ranks, they'll fight no more. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, they soon shall hear the bullets flying. We'll shoot the generals on our own side. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. No saviour from on high delivers, no faith have we in prince or peer. Our own right hand the chains must shiver, chains of hatred, greed and fear. Ere the thieves will out with their booty and give to all a happier lot. Each at the forge must do their duty, and will strike while the iron is hot. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. Us all comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. The Internationale unites the human race.
from Sydney are called Roaring Jack, and they commemorate the latter occasion with the Ballad of 75.
I remember the day I was no more than a boy, working in an oxide plant at the back of North Fitzroy. Bert Gilchrist told the gaffer, 'cause Bert Gilchrist had the clout. He said they'd given Goth the bullet, and the lads are walking out. And we walked right up that job while the gaffer held the door, and watched it on the telly in a TV rental store. It was one hell of a situation, the kind you just can't gauge. There was Gough on the steps of Parliament House saying no, maintain the rage. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. There was violence in the air as I walked back home that night. Everyone you'd meet was getting ready for the fight, saying if they're out for trouble, then trouble's what they'll get. We started out a colony, didn't think we're a colony. Drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. But as the weeks went by, the anger turned to mild relief. Locks were freed like magic, and I watched in disbelief to see a scam so blatant, so jacked up and full of holes, and the people in their thousands endorsed it at the polls. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the push it out. Some said they had it coming, some were closer to the mark, who spoke about conspiracy, sinister and dark. But history records it, and the story will be read, how we let them take democracy and stand it on its head. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out.